Roar!
Ew.
Chapter 8 Miracle Pill. Loud pounding and shaking walls brought Stephen to consciousness in his bed. Who in their right mind blasts a subwoofer at full volume while driving down the street on Saturday morning? The inconsiderate man's bass was cranked up so loud that Stephen's house rattled as he passed by. Once it passed, Stephen lay in his bed and enjoyed the otherwise quiet morning. He wanted to stay in his bed forever. Being on his third consecutive day of whatever this was, lying in bed was a good mental rest if nothing else. But there was cause for optimism, as today was the day it all gets fixed. Peering over to the clock, he saw he had 3 hours until his appointment with a sleep specialist. Not needing to be anywhere anytime soon, he remained in bed, even with the sun coming through his bedroom windows, the room gradually heating up and the bed slowly getting uncomfortable. Stephen remained in his bed and let himself rest. After over half an hour of good relaxation, Stephen decided it was time to get ready. Today was slightly better in a sense of not necessarily feeling his exhaustion. Either he was getting used to it, or the nap he took before getting out of bed had slightly refreshed him. However, despite feeling awake, he also felt like a tortoise as his movements were noticeably slower than usual. This continued through making breakfast. Stephen decided to make himself an extra large breakfast this morning, when he remembered something one of his friends in the military had told him. They tell you to get at least 3 hours of sleep. If you can't get 3 hours of sleep, stay awake and eat every 2 hours. This was going to be Stephen's plan until he got everything straightened out. On the way to the doctor's office, he heard an advertisement on the radio for 5-hour energy, and considered adding that to his new regimen as well. On his way to the appointment, Stephen's phone rang with Selena on the other end.
Hello?
Stephen spoke slightly slower than normal.
Hey, Stephen!
Selena was her usual energy self.
You sound drowsy today. Are you alright?
Still exhausted, I guess.
Stephen tried to make himself talk normal.
That's no good.
Selena proclaimed.
Don't worry about me. I'm on my way to the doctor's office, so it'll all be over soon. Did you need something while I'm out?
Not really. I just wanted to see if you were down for more Portal today.
I would love that. You can come over as soon as I get home from my appointment.
What time is that?
Let's say 4 o'clock, to be safe.
Oh, okay. Did you sleep alright last night?
I might have, but I'm still having those blasted dreams.
Stephen,
Concern raised in Selena's voice.
you're beginning to worry me with these dreams of yours. Are you going to be okay?
We'll find out today, won't we?
If it's the dreams that are causing you so much trouble, shouldn't you be seeing a psychologist instead of a sleep specialist?
Was she suggesting that Stephen wasn't mentally sound?
I'm not crazy, Selena. I know that much.
Stephen caught a very slight undertone of anger in his voice and instantly regretted it.
Okay, sorry. I didn't mean it.
It's alright, Selena. I didn't mean to get testy. Don't worry, though. I'll have all this fixed soon.
Do you promise?
Selena's voice sounded like she was trying to do puppy dog eyes over the phone.
Yes, Selena. I promise. Within the next 4 days, I'll have it all figured out.
Stephen said, remembering the promise he had made to Twilight Sparkle.
Do you pinky promise?
I'm not there to actually lock pinkies with you, but yes.
That'll have to do for now. I'll get a real pinky promise later. Have fun at the doctor's office. I love you.
I love you too, Selena. Bye.
Stephen hung up his phone and pulled into the medical district's parking lot. Stephen waited in the office for only a couple of minutes before the specialist appeared. The doctor introduced himself as Viknesh, before having a seat across from Stephen and looking over his clipboard.
It says here you've been having trouble sleeping for about 3 days now,
he said with a small smile.
I'm glad you came to me so soon. Usually people wait weeks or longer before seeking help, and by then the problem has usually gotten worse.
I've got my annual reviews coming up at work. If I get a good review, I'll get a pay raise and maybe a promotion. So, I can't take any chances of having whatever this is affect me at work.
That's good then. Can you tell me what's going on?
It's the strangest thing. Whenever I go to sleep, I start having these weird dreams. When I wake up, I don't feel like I've slept at all.
What kind of dreams?
Stephen shifted in his chair.
Does it matter?
It might.
Said Vignesh. Stephen averted his eyes.
I'm in a world of different types of ponies that can fly and do magic.
Stephen blurted in a way he'd hoped Vignesh wouldn't hear. Stephen peered up at Vignesh and waited for a reaction, but the doctor simply nodded his head as he scribbled something into his clipboard. It was probably something about how absurd Stephen's statement was.
While you're asleep, are you aware that you're dreaming?
When you open your eyes and you're suddenly a dark red pony with big blue eyes, it's kind of hard not to know that you're dreaming.
Have you tried waking yourself up?
I have, but it didn't work. It took my alarm going off to wake me up.
Then you don't feel like you slept?
Yeah, I feel just like I did back in community college when I had to pull all-nighters. Oh, then 2 nights ago, I took a beating in the dream. When I woke up, I was covered in bruises.
Vignesh stopped taking notes and looked up from his clipboard with a raised brow.
Bruises? May I see?
Stephen stood and ran his hand over his torso. After Stephen found a sore spot on his stomach, he raised his shirt, showing Vignesh the bruise. The doctor wheeled himself forward to examine it closer. The splotch was slightly faded from having been there for 2 days, but it looked almost 5 inches in diameter. A slight touch was all it took to elicit a pained squeak from Stephen.
Have you been putting this on ice?
Vignesh asked. Stephen thought for a moment.
Nope, but that's something I should be doing, isn't it?
Vignesh smiled and nodded his head.
Is it just the one bruise?
I counted 4 on my front that I can feel, and I know there's a few on my back. There might be others that I can't see.
Do you think you've been sleepwalking?
I don't think so.
But do you know so?
The night before I woke up with these bruises, I fell asleep in an awkward position with my girlfriend lying on top of me. When I woke up, we were still in the same position.
Perhaps you've moved, bumped into a few things, and then came back to where you were?
It's possible, I guess.
Stephen lowered his shirt and sat back down.
Selena's a sound sleeper, but she's not a rock. I would think she would have noticed if I moved her like that.
Vignesh stroked his chin.
You might be right, but let's not rule out the possibility of sleepwalking yet. What position were you and your girlfriend sleeping in?
It was kind of like this.
Stephen backed up against the wall. He leaned his head, neck and shoulders against it, with the rest of his body at about a 45-degree angle to the wall.
My head and shoulders were up on the headboard, and the rest of me was flat on the bed. Selena was on my stomach with her arms around me.
Vignesh raised an eyebrow at Stephen.
That's certainly not a healthy position for your back or neck, but I don't think it could bruise you so badly.
But if that's not it, what else could it be?
It could be any number of things.
Said Vignesh. He took out a thin piece of paper and started writing on it.
Sleep apnea, lucid dreaming, or sleepwalking are the first possibilities that come to mind. I'm going to start you off on a prescription of sleeping pills and see if that works. I suggest taking a notebook and writing down the dates, what time you go to bed, what time you wake up, what you dream about, and how rested you feel. If that doesn't work, we'll get you back here for a night of observation. That could help us narrow it down quite a bit.
Vignesh wheeled his chair to the other side of the room to grab a business card from a stack.
Try seeing a psychiatrist as well.
Vignesh handed the card to Stephen. Stephen took the card and looked it over.
Why do I need a psychiatrist?
He asked with a raised eyebrow.
She'll be able to figure out if you have a chemical imbalance in your brain or if there's something going on in your mind. It's worth looking into.
All of this sounds like a bit much. Is any of this going to affect me at work?
Not any more than leaving this alone would affect you.
Okay, but how about cost? I don't think my insurance plan covers specialist visits or things like what you suggested.
I'm sure we can work a way around it.
Vignesh reassured.
It'll take a couple weeks to get everything set up. We'll call you in a few days with some possible appointment times. Until then, maybe the sleeping pills will help you enough. You can always cancel the appointments if this works itself out.
In a couple of weeks, the employee reviews would be over. Stephen had really hoped this all would be fixed before then, but it was looking like he would just have to tough it out and hold himself together until the reviews were over.
That sounds like a plan.
That's good then.
He then took a few minutes to tell Stephen about all the different treatment options they could take after the different tests had been done. Once Vignesh was done explaining everything, they stood and shook each other's hands.
The receptionist outside will get you set up and we'll be in touch.
Dr. Vignesh handed Stephen his prescription, and Stephen saw his way out. After finishing up some paperwork with the receptionist, Stephen left the office in an odd mood. He'd gone in with high hopes and was looking forward to getting this taken care of as soon as possible. Now he was only more confused at the number of possibilities. But he should have known better than to expect an immediate diagnosis and treatment plan in the first place. Stephen's best hope now was on the off chance his miracle pill would come in the literal form of his prescription. On that sliver of hope, Stephen filled his prescription and brought himself lunch. Stephen got himself home as quick as he could and called Selena over. When she arrived, Stephen vented his frustration and confusion to her. She was doing her best to offer help, but Stephen could tell by her growing concern she had no idea what to do.
What do you think about that?
Stephen asked her a couple of times during this venting. She would stare at him like a deer in headlights for a long awkward moment before offering some vague advice. Like Stephen against the Timberwolves, Selena didn't know how to help people like this. Even though that had been a dream, Stephen still remembered what it felt like. Watching in helplessness was a lousy feeling on multiple levels, and Selena was likely experiencing something similar now. Stephen decided she shouldn't have to go through it if he could avoid it, so he dropped the subject. After a hug, a kiss, and a proper pinky promise that he'd be alright, they booted up the console. Portals to cooperative mode helped them forget about their worries. For a couple of hours they laughed and they played just like the day before. But after those couple hours had passed, Stephen's exhaustion started taking its toll again. His mind didn't want to maintain any train of thought, ending them abruptly and leaving him in a mental blackness. This resulted in several consecutive mistakes and an increasing requirement of trial and error during the game. The challenges kept getting more and more difficult. Under normal circumstances, that wouldn't have been the frustrating part. The frustrating part was Stephen being aware that the increased difficulty was all in his head. Selena spoke up when Stephen needed to pause the game to relieve his frustration.
Maybe we should take a break and make dinner.
With a nod, Stephen shut down their game and they raided the refrigerator. Although he had plenty of groceries stored away, he couldn't decide on what he wanted to make in his state of mind. In fact, he didn't have enough energy or motivation to make anything. So Selena made the decision by grabbing items at random. She came out with waffles and a variety of soup cans, a combination that Stephen found hilarious. Now that he wasn't trying so hard to think, Stephen could relax. He found himself laughing at the way Selena pretended to be on a cooking show as she mixed the Italian wedding chicken noodle and beef stew together in a large bowl. But she could only keep that bit going for a minute before breaking down into laughter herself. Her laughter only made Stephen laugh harder. Once they recovered, he felt much better and used a sudden burst of energy to complete the previously arduous task of dropping waffles into the toaster. Once they popped, Stephen set the table and Selena served their concoction. To Stephen's surprise, the Italian beef chicken stew noodle soup abomination, as Selena called it, was a tasty combination. The out-of-place flavour in this equation was the waffles and syrup. Inspired by Selena's spontaneity, Stephen took action.
These waffles need something different.
Stephen cried out as energetically as he could.
What's that?
Selena asked as Stephen grabbed a pair of waffles out of the toaster, threw them onto his plate, then he proceeded to douse them with hot sauce.
You're a lunatic.
She shouted in between peals of laughter.
You've known me long enough to know I'll put hot sauce on anything.
Stephen bit off a chunk of a waffle and immediately regretted his decision. It was true. He did like hot sauce on many a different food. Waffles, however, were a bad idea. He swallowed it in an attempt to look tough, but he knew he hadn't fooled Selena, when she burst into such laughter that she fell off her chair. After having a good laugh and finishing their meal, it was time to clean up dinner and the kitchen. It was almost 8 at night when they finished, and Selena asked,
Do you want to watch a movie or something?
I have to start my prescription tonight. I have no idea how it'll affect me. We can pop one in if you want, but I can't promise I'll be awake the whole time.
That's alright,
said Selena, wrapping her arms around him.
This really stinks, though. I'm starting to lose time with you over this thing. I don't like it.
Stephen sighed.
Believe me, I like it about as much as you do.
With that, Stephen and Selena went into the living room. Once Selena had picked a movie, Stephen put it on the DVD player and went to get a dosage of his prescription. As the movie started, he sat next to Selena.
Here's hoping this works,
he said just before downing the pills.
Are you planning on staying here tonight?
Yes, but I have to work in the morning, so I won't be here when you wake up. I'll leave you some breakfast, though.
What would I do without you?
Stephen asked, kissing Selena on the cheek.
You'd probably go crazy and do something stupid.
Selena chuckled. Stephen laid back on his couch and pulled Selena closer to his chest.
You're probably right.
Stephen enjoyed the first 40 minutes of the movie before passing out with Selena in his arms. Stephen opened his eyes to a dark town of Ponyville. Nothing had changed on this front, but perhaps he'll at least wake up feeling rested. Standing up, he shook some sleepiness off his head. While trying to regain his bearings on where he was, he heard Twilight's voice call to him.
Is that you, Stephen?
Turning around, he met 3 moonlit silhouettes. One of them was definitely Spike, the other 2 looked like ponies wearing saddlebags. Twilight's horn lit up and provided them with some better light. The pony next to her had a white coat, dark purple mane, and a horn on her head.
Hey everyone, what's up?
Twilight?
The white pony spoke up with a very feminine voice.
Is this the stallion that you were telling me about today?
Oh, yes.
Twilight replied.
Stephen, this is my friend, Rarity. Rarity, this is Stephen.
Stephen had heard this name before, but he couldn't instantly remember where. Rarity held out a hoof to Stephen.
Pleasure to meet you, Stephen.
The posh tone in her voice prompted Stephen to respond formally.
The pleasure is mine.
Stephen remembered his mother's etiquette skills as he shook Rarity's hoof.
What are you 2 up to?
Twilight and Spike had errands to run in the same direction as me today, so I decided to take along as extra company.
I really can't wait to get back to the library. I've been carrying around these books all day.
Is that the book you were talking about a couple nights ago? The one that you only had the abridged version of?
One of them is. But then I saw a newspaper article about something called the Stone of Sisyphus getting stolen from the Cloudsdale Museum at the beginning of this week. None of the books in my library could tell me anything about it, so I ordered a few that might.
I remember seeing that article when we were doing research together. It sounds like you got your reading cut out for you.
Star Swirl's Guide on Advanced Teleportation alone is going to take me a couple of days to study. I can see why there's abridged versions of it.
I'm told you spent your last night on the farm with Applejack,
said Rarity.
How did it go?
Stephen's heart sank as he remembered the previous night. Dropping his eyes up from Rarity's, he said,
Let's just say that I learned a lot.
Yes, well, the rough and tumble nature of farm work can do that to a pony,
said Rarity.
Did you have any plans made for tonight?
Not yet.
Well, I got a commission deadline coming up, and I could certainly use some help in my shop tonight. Would you be willing to give a lady a helping hoof?
Rarity asked, with a big smile and big eyes.
What exactly do you do?
He asked, a little standoffish, remembering what happened when he agreed to help Applejack.
I am a seamstress, darling. I make and sell dresses at the Carousel Boutique here in town.
Ponies wear clothes?
Stephen blurted out without thinking. Rarity gasped and stepped back.
Why, of course we do! Whenever gave you that impression that we didn't?
I'm sorry, but ponies don't wear clothes where I come from, and I haven't seen any clothing since I got here.
We don't normally wear clothes,
said Twilight.
but sometimes we dress up for formal events. Rarity here makes some of the best dresses in Equestria.
I've never sewn before. Are you sure I'll be of any help?
Nonsense, Stephen. I'm sure you will do just fine.
I've heard that before.
Wait,
said Spike.
don't you want my help too?
Rarity perked up.
Of course! Another set of hands would be lovely, Spike. Thank you for offering.
Spike turned over to Twilight.
Twilight, is it okay if I help Rarity too?
Spike speaking Rarity's name jogged Stephen's memory as to where he had heard the name before. When Stephen met Spike the other day, Spike was pretending to address a love interest while flexing in front of her mirror. This was the Rarity he was referring to? If so, there was literally no part of this which made any sense to Stephen. A dragon with a crush on a pony gets jealous when she asks another pony for help and possibly sees the other pony as a romantic competitor, which isn't even possible considering the two ponies just now met each other. Stephen knew better than to try and make sense of this. He had been reminding himself to play along for 3 nights in a row. On the other hand, Stephen could only handle so much absurdity and could feel himself approaching the straw that would break the horse's back. So he looked at Twilight in hopes that she'd have an answer for any of this. Twilight spoke up before Stephen had a chance to ask any of his questions.
Spike, you usually have trouble staying up late. Do you really think you'll be able to keep up with Stephen and Rarity all night?
Stephen decided against asking any questions when he saw Twilight treat the situation like it was normal. He'd just have to tough it out and play along some more.
At this point, it won't be too difficult to keep up with me.
Stephen injected with a yawn.
Exactly. If he can do it, then I'm sure I can too.
That's not necessarily what I meant.
Stephen muttered to himself.
All right, Spike. You can go help Rarity if you want.
Well then, every pony. It seems we all have our work cut out for us tonight. Let's get started, shall we?
As Rarity trotted off, Spike moved to follow her but was stopped by Twilight grabbing his tail, nearly causing him to trip.
Hey, what did you do that for?
Twilight lowered her head to make eye-level contact with Spike.
You'd better behave yourself.
Spike shrugged his shoulders.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'll be just fine.
With that, Spike skipped off and called back.
See you tomorrow, Twilight.
Unsure what he just witnessed, Stephen looked over to Twilight, who was breathing a frustrated sigh.
Is he always like that?
Stephen asked.
He's usually a really good helper, but sometimes he gets competitive and bites off more than he can chew.
He's just a little kid, isn't he? I don't think it'll be a big deal.
Stephen tried to reassure Twilight.
I hope so. Let me know if he causes any trouble, okay?
Stephen nodded at Twilight. After bidding each other goodnight, Stephen turned around and ran to catch up with Rarity and Spike. And a howling thank you to my Patreons.